Okay, folks, did you catch the 2 hour plus review by EVS of Eric July's Isom #1? Well, I did, and I'm here to give you the high points. EVS is, of course, Ethan Van Sciver, Comicsgater and legendary artist from Green Lantern Rebirth and Flash Rebirth, and also of his own property, Cyberfrog, which is now on Cyberfrog #3, Red Extermination. If you buy into that on Indiegogo, you can also pick up Cyberfrog 1 and 2, 1 being Bloodhoney, 2 being Wrecked Planet, as a special collected edition. So, if you're interested in picking up his latest offerings, feel free to go to Indiegogo and pick those up. And we're going to be looking at how he examined Isom #1. Now, he saw things that I didn't see. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to agree with him on his assessments of all the things that he saw that I didn't see. But he did at least pick out certain things that, it's interesting to draw attention to. Like, for example, Isom #1. On the cover, he had a particular gripe about that. I had my own gripes about it. My particular gripes was, hey, this is a #1 issue. I'm looking at a cover of 3 characters attacking another character, and I don't know who Isom is on this page. All I know is the book's named Isom. I don't know if that refers to the group. I don't know if that refers to the character on the ground. I don't know if it refers to something other entirely. So it's a little bit of a confusing cover in that aspect. Moreover, the cover doesn't really reflect what happens in the book. If you look inside the book, you'll see that there is only a minuscule interaction between the main character, Avery Silman, and the 3 characters in the sky, who are Alpha Core. Oh, and by the way, I guess Braxwell, who is the guy on the left, must be holding up Ingrid Valdez, because she, in fact, cannot fly. Now, Ethan's gripe is something entirely other than this, and his gripe is, none of the characters are looking at the reader. Yeah, I'm not really huge on that. And I know Ethan is, because that's basically his philosophy by which he draws his covers. He thinks that if you really want to catch the reader's eye, then the character's eye should catch the reader's eye. But the problem I have is that this is dull. I mean, I look at this and I think, they don't even act like they're in any danger. So why should I be excited about this cover when they don't seem excited in the least themselves? I mean, in my opinion, Bloodruth ought to be offering up at least a grimace, that's her in the foreground there, to show that she's putting some effort into using her powers, and Avery would be better off if he were looking off to the side, and this way he would be making note of the fact that these dangerous creatures are looming up behind him and about to deliver a, who knows, serious beatdown on him. So I want to see these characters act as if they are actually under stress and in danger, so that I can emotionally relate to that and think, oh my gosh, how are they going to get out of that? And then I've got a question in my mind that I know I need to open the pages of the book to answer. But just seeing them like, we're fine, that doesn't do it for me. Now, I know Ethan's going to come back and say, hey, Mike, my cover sold the most of any of the Isom #2 covers. And that is entirely true. However, cover D, which is the ongoing cover, was not even offered until halfway through the Isom #2 campaign. It was a late offering, and by then, people had already made their decisions of which of the other 3 covers to buy, so it was never really in the running. Cover C by Shane Davis was priced at $100 for being a foil cover, so it was never really in the running either. The only cover that was in the running was cover A, which is my particular favorite, as to its adhering mostly to what is in the book, and also using that kind of funky Marvel flashback style. But, yeah, that one did do worse than cover B, but only by 500 issues, a little less than 500 issues. So it wasn't like cover B was a runaway compared to every other cover when you factor in all the other concerns. Nevertheless, I do think Ethan is right on occasion about the whole, let the reader see the character's eyes. Like, for example, he says toward the end of the book where you have this picture of Yaira in orbit around the Earth, then yes, this is a good example of art where the character's eyes could be meeting the reader's eyes to greater effect. So he's not wrong about that, about the principle of having the character's eyes meet the reader's eyes on occasion. But again, if this were a cover, then I would say, let's go for it. If this were, if this were one of the Yaira covers, I would say, yeah, you can open her eyes on this one and have her look at the reader. That would be a good idea. But then again, she's not being attacked by anyone. If she was being attacked by somebody behind her, I'd want her focused on the person behind her. I would not want her focused on me. Now here is an interior art picture, and it's one of two. When you open the book, the first thing you see is a couple of interior art pictures that just kind of whet your appetite for what you're going to see on the inside. And this is a nice little picture showing Avery Solman with his niece, and there's a lot of empty space on the side, and Ethan complains a great deal about the fact that there's that empty space there. He says, Eric could have filled this with, dedication text. It doesn't have to be just artwork sitting there with nothing to say on the left-hand side. But what was really funny about his analysis of it is that he was like, oh, I see that empty space, and I just want to fill it. And I think, yeah, dude, I know that's actually one of your problems with your art, is that you keep wanting to fill every available inch of space with foreground art, and sometimes that doesn't help. Like in this case, where the top panel here has Cyberfrog filling up the space so badly that instead of, just regularly letting the panel cut off the foot, we got the foot jutting out at us, as if that's like the most important part of anything on the page. Back off. Back him off until his whole body fits in the panel. And then, draw a little bit of extra background in and around him so that, we get more of a scene as opposed to just a piece of art shoved up in her face. Same thing with this picture. I wasn't able to get the whole thing. I was looking for a good clip of this on the internet and was only able to find this much. But, I'm looking at this and I'm like, damn, dude, get out of my face, You can actually back him up some and then let the background breathe a little. And let the reader breathe a little. You don't have to have your characters practically invading the reader's personal space. And, oh, by the way, the moon is never that big. Never. So yeah, don't get so caught up in having to fill every piece of available space that you see. It's not always to the reader's benefit when you have all that hyper-detailed work just shoved in your face like that. So this scene I look at and I think, yeah, it's nice, and besides, it's just throwaway art. Kind of like the next couple of pages. You got the title pages, and Ethan's complaining about the crosses, or the apparent crosses, that seem to be around the sides and in the gutter of the book. And I'm looking at that like, really? You're complaining about that? Because we don't even know that it's a cross. It could be a plus sign. And I say that because it's possible that one of Isom's powers, as evidenced in both Isom number 1 and Isom number 2, if you're looking carefully, may be the ability to add his enemy's powers to himself for a short period of time. So when you see Avery get attacked by Yaira and she uses super speed to attack him, there's a scene later on in the book where Avery uses super speed himself, and Santuan even comments, wait, you couldn't do that before. And then in Isom number 2, there is a scene where the creatures who have the capacity to blow up and explode, it looks like Avery is able to absorb their power and use that to make an explosive kind of blasting jump of some sort. So maybe the cross that's on his outfit is actually a plus sign. But in any case, why freak out about it? Here's another good example of, oh, I just got to fill this empty space. Ethan wants the Yaira label, where you can barely see it here. He's got it circled here. the Yaira label, so that we know who this character is, he's thinking, oh, you got to blow this up. You got to be like kaboom right in the reader's face. No, don't go for the cheap kaboom. Go for consistency, because when you look on a later page, about 2 pages later, this name text is the same size as these name texts. And this is a case where consistency is much more important than just a cheap kaboom in the reader's face. Like I said, not everything has to be invading the reader's personal space. Likewise, Ethan had a lot to say about the fight choreography on this page, and I kind of partially agree, partially disagree. Disagree for the most part because he seemed to have problems with pretty much all of the panels. And I don't know why, because when I look at the fight choreography from starting with panel number 2, I don't see a problem. I don't see a problem with Braxwell punching Yaira, and then Yaira doing a flip, and then kicking Braxwell at the end of the flip, then going off to pursue Braxwell, and then Ingrid Valdez's whip catches her by the leg. Yaira notices. Ingrid pulls herself up to try and punch Yaira, misses the punch. Yaira spins around and blasts Ingrid Valdez in the back. All of that looks like seamless fight choreography to me. The only place where we run roughshod over the fight choreography is in this place where Yaira is diving at the cops, and Ethan rightly points out that all of a sudden you've got Braxwell in between the cops and her, and it's not really apparent that the cops have just been protected by him. So, it is what it is. Now, here's where we really get into the meat and potatoes of Ethan's criticism of Eric July's writing. And this is also going to put me on I don't want to say put me on blast, but basically this is going to highlight a big difference I have between Ethan's critiquing Eric's writing and my critiquing Eric's writing. Because one of the things that I try to pay attention to is what the author wants the characters to be and do. And it can't just conflict with what I personally want. But that's how Ethan comes across in his analysis of Eric July's writing here, because this is the page in which Avery's sister Altona contacts him and says, my intern Jasmine is missing. Jasmine is Mrs. Newman's daughter. Mrs. Newman used to go to their church and was a friend of their mother, so, basically she's like family to them. And now her daughter has gone missing, and Jasmine, the daughter, has been spotted in the company of an individual named Darren Fontano, who is a shot caller now in Florence Park, and it's not good that Jasmine is associating with Darren. Avery used to associate with Darren back in high school, and so Altona is hoping that because they used to be friends of a sort, then he can go to Darren in friendship and say, hey, can you at least tell me where Jasmine is? And Avery is reluctant as hell to get involved. He does not want to be any part of this. He stays out of Florence Park for a reason. We don't know what reason, but he does not like going to the city, doesn't want to go to the city, doesn't really care about Jasmine, doesn't really want to do all this, but because Mrs. Newman is a friend of his mom's, and he knows Altona's going to tell on him to his mom, then he's going to go, and he's going to be a reluctant, interested party. Okay, so what Ethan has to say, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that the stakes should have been high and outrageous. Not just my intern Jasmine is missing, but Darren is pimping out 13-year-old Jasmine. Likewise, Avery should be fully motivated, not reluctant to get involved, but outraged and out for blood. Like, I'm going to kill this guy. But that's not who Avery is. Avery is not the crusading, justice-seeking hero. If he were, this would be a different book altogether from Isom. Isom is about a reluctant hero. And when you look at it that way, the real victim here, the real person whom we're supposed to be empathizing with here, is not Jasmine. And that's one of Ethan's main complaints, is that, you wind up not really caring so much about Jasmine, and he doesn't even care very much about Jasmine, so why should we be invested in Jasmine? But Jasmine's never the person who we're supposed to be invested in the first place. The person who is the real victim here, at least from the book's perspective, is Avery, because he's having to be pulled out of his comfortable life back into this hero-style life that he doesn't want. Something got him out of the hero business long ago. He doesn't want to be in it now. Why the hell are people bothering me? Why am I having to do this when I really don't want to? And that's a situation that most of us have encountered at some point of our lives. So the person we're sympathizing with, or who we're supposed to be sympathizing with, is Avery. He's all of a sudden, some damn fool family member or pseudo-family member has gotten herself into trouble, and you have to be pulled out of your comfortable, safe environment, and you have to put yourself into the crosshairs in order to help that person out. I've been there. Lots of people have been there. So, when you're looking at the character, you really should be empathizing with Avery most of all, not with Jasmine, because we don't even know whether Jasmine's, missing because she wants to be, or she's missing because she's been kidnapped or something. We have no idea what happened to her. But we know what's happening to Avery, and Avery's being pulled out of his environment into a more dangerous environment, pretty much against his will, but, he's going to go because he feels a sense of loyalty to his mom, to old time's sake, whatever. Okay, so that's the thing, is you can't make the book be something other than what it's supposed to be. When you say, he should be out for blood and out to pound Darren into a pulp because he's pimping out this young girl, and, that's not the story. And it never was. And you can't force it into that mold just because that's the low-hanging fruit approach to writing this particular sequence. It doesn't make Avery into a more complex character. The more complex character is the reluctant hero who would rather not get involved. And Ethan goes into that same motif again when he suggests that toward the end of the book, instead of Altona and her daughter being safe in her home, that the home should explode and Altona and the daughter should be killed, and Avery should want to go on a rage quest then. But again, he has plans for Altona. It's apparent by Isom number 2 that Eric has some plans for Altona. He has some plans for Avery's niece. So there's not going to be that, sudden, oops, now they're dead and he's going to be going off on a quest for vengeance now. That doesn't mean they're not in danger. In fact, it's very much emphasized during the scene that they are in danger. I mean, he's not saying that to the little girl, of course, but he is communicating with Altona that, here's what I did, here's how things went south, I need you to be carrying a gun from now on, you're not necessarily safe, and I've got to go figure out how to protect you. So this is Avery basically realizing that he can't just go back to his old safe life. And that is a kind of transition. It's not as sharp a transition as a house blowing up, but you shouldn't need a house blowing up in order to understand that transition has been made. So again, you can't just drive the story into the easy channels. This is a book that, I'm not saying it's like high art, but at the same time, it's not taking the easiest paths to where it needs to go. Now, there are a couple of things that I just agree with Ethan 100%, and I was shocked to realize that I had missed these things. For example, we have Darren here in the white suit is pointing to where he would like himself and Avery to be sitting as they conduct their discussion. And it's a purple seat up against the wall. And you'll notice that the wall is blank. But when you go to the next page, that wall actually has guitars hanging on it. Those guitars should have been on the previous page. So that is an art snafu that I did not see and Ethan did see. So kudos to Ethan for that. Here is an interesting foray into 3D assets. And this is something that I really don't have a problem with. I have more of a problem with the fact that the parking stripes go right up against the building, which is just asinine. But the fact that uh, the artist, Cliff Richards, is using 3D assets to pose Santuan, to pose Avery, and then basically between these two panels, you'll look and you'll see that this is exactly the same as this, just seen from another direction. And apparently that is what 3D asset software allows you to do, is take these 3D models, put them in a particular pose, and then you can adjust the view at which you're seeing them and just trace at both angles what it is you want to show. So you look at this and you see Avery's got his arm gripped and Santuan's in this particular pose where he's reaching back to strike. And for the most part, this is the exact same thing. It's not 100% the same, but it's very, very, very similar. So it looks like there was this rotation that was done and a little bit of jiggering with the angle, and then you've got practically the same scene with a little bit of difference. I mean, honestly, his arm is outstretched here rather than coiled here, and you have Santuan's arm cocked back a little further than it is here. But for the most part, it's the same thing. And that kind of shows how Cliff Richards is able to, and I'm going to put it in these terms, work smarter rather than harder on constructing this scene. Because honestly, I could care less whether these are 3D models or not. I know there's some people who are feeling like, oh, this is an insult to the craft, and the reader deserves better from you than for you to be just tracing things. It's like, look, as long as it tells the story, I don't really care. Just make sure it looks actually good. Don't give us the castle that I saw, Bloodroot's castle in Isom #2 does not look good. This looks good. This is good artwork, despite the fact that it was done with maybe a minimal of effort compared to what it would have been if it had been freely drawn. So I don't really care about the 3D aspect, but I did want to show you what Ethan was demonstrating to us, because this does kind of prove that the 3D stuff was being used. At least that's what it seems like to me. Now here is a scene where Ethan has an issue with the page composition, because where we see Santuan and Avery lifting off, and this is the point where he's combining Yaira's speed with his own strength, Santuan and he are being propelled, and then they crunch into the wall, and then they're through the wall, but it all goes down in a series of successively smaller panels. And what Ethan points out, very validly, I think, is that on a page like this, you really want the action to grow and grow as far as the panel size goes. You want to have this be maybe a thin panel, showing them lifting off, and then hitting the wall would be slightly bigger, and then you'd have a big kaboom kind of scene with them going through the wall and showing, how that all panned out in sequence. So that is a good point. It's not something that I really thought of, because I was having too hard of a time just trying to figure out what the hell was going on here in the first place. And then last but not least, I can't even believe I didn't notice this myself. And it is really, really disgusting when you think about it. Somewhere near Florida. Oh my God. If you cannot be any vaguer about where this concert is taking place. Now, first, think about the fact of, why the hell does it matter? Why does it matter that, let's say this was taking place in Tallahassee, Florida or something. Doesn't matter. This could have been taking place in, Bendover, Iowa or something. It doesn't matter where this is taking place, other than the fact that it's not actually in Florist Park. For some reason. I don't know exactly why. But, yeah, why is it somewhere near Florida? And do you have any idea how somewhere near an entire state is? Look at this. This is where the continental United States borders Florida. We're talking about anywhere in the pink is where this concert could have taken place. We don't even know what state this concert took place in. That doesn't really matter, so why not just throw a damn dart at the map and say, Marianna, Florida, or Atlanta, Georgia, or Montgomery, Alabama, or something like that. It just doesn't matter. Somewhere near Florida? Really? You had to keep it that vague? Oh my God. So that concludes my review of Ethan Van Sciver's review of Isom #1. Most of the stuff was, other stuff that he and I already agree upon. I don't feel like I should, have to sift through all of that. There's also other things that he pointed out that I have issues with, but I brought those up on other occasions. So I figure, let's just keep it short and simple and hit the high points, and, I'll just show you the stuff that I felt like I learned something, at least. And I hope that you learned something in the process, hopefully things that will make your comics better. I appreciate your watching this video, and please do subscribe to make sure that you get notified of my future videos, and I will talk to y'all later.